Good morning. My name is Laksh Bell, and today I want to talk about CEL token, the native token of the Celsius cryptocurrency rewards app that you might already know about. And today I want to talk in particular about the CEL token and its utility, and how a lot of people have been hotly debating that the CEL token has no utility whatsoever or very little utility, which is why the price keeps going down. For those who are unaware, let me quickly show you what people are talking about, and they're not wrong. The price of CEL token has gone down from an all-time high of roughly $8, actually $8 and 5 cents if memory serves, to now roughly around $3. And this is now a rank 99 cryptocurrency. It used to be in the top 50. I think at one point it was even in the top 40, but now it's been falling for almost 7 months uncontrollably. And if you look at some of the articles on Reddit, or some of the posts on Reddit, or some of the posts on Twitter, even on Telegram in groups, there seems to be a consensus about, and I don't know how many people believe this. I just think it's a very vocal minority that seem to believe this, or seem to be the proponents of the idea that CEL token has no utility whatsoever, or very little utility whatsoever, which is why you should sell it, and it's a signal for you to sell it. There's also some controversy about Alex Mashinsky, who is the founder of Celsius Network, co-founder of Celsius Network, having sold several millions of dollars worth of CEL token, and that actually crashed the price a little bit. And that's also true for some of the other co-founders of Celsius Network. So we're going to talk about all of that. But let's talk about the utility first and foremost of the CEL token. Okay. Now, recently I checked the assets under management for Celsius Network. And then that was close to $25 billion in assets, right? That's the assets under management, total assets under management, which is the net of all the assets they hold. Then the verified number of users is roughly 500,000 now. It's over 500,000. The date today is 21st of January 2022. So if you look at the assets under management per verified user, that number would be 25 billion. That's 9 zeros, divided by 500,000. That's 5 zeros. So that's $50,000, okay? So what you can say, and this is a very rudimentary analysis, or very off the top of my fingers analysis, but that gets the point across. So you can say the average user holds $50,000 inside their Celsius wallet in all cryptocurrencies. Now, this might be the biggest cryptocurrency held by Celsius users might be Ethereum, might be Bitcoin, depending upon the time we're looking at and their relative values. But I'm just going to assume that most people hold most of their cryptocurrencies in their Celsius wallet. The currency that they hold is Bitcoin. So that's the assumption going forward. Of course, that's not true. However, it allows us to try and figure out whether CEL token is something that is worth holding or not. The numbers would change a little bit as the mix of cryptocurrencies held by individual users in their wallets changes. But the overall analysis remains. So you can do this analysis for yourself as well. Now, if you are a CEL token holder, and if you hold a certain amount of CEL token, you can have one of these 5 different levels. So you can have no special level. You can be a bronze level CEL token holder. You could be a silver, gold, or platinum tier CEL token holder. Okay. And in order to be a platinum tier CEL token holder, you have to hold 25% of your portfolio, a minimum of 25% of your portfolio in CEL tokens. If you want to be a gold tier CEL token holder, then you have to have 15% of your portfolio in CEL tokens. For silver, you have to have 10%. For bronze, you have to have a minimum of 5% of your portfolio in CEL tokens, so on and so forth. Okay? Which means, and we're just going to do this analysis for now, just for, an average user, which is of course a very misleading term, because average is comprised of whales as well as minnows, so to speak. So you might have $200,000 or $2 million in your Celsius wallet, or you might have $2,000 or even $200 in your Celsius wallet. But the point is the average of all users, which also includes the likes of Alex Mashinsky, have $50,000 or has $50,000 on their wallet. Okay. So right now the value of Bitcoin is roughly $40,000. And if you want to have a platinum status, you would have $10,000 in CEL token. So this data is coming directly from the Celsius Network website. As you can see, if you want to be a platinum status CEL token holder, so CEL tokens have to be 25% of the rest of your portfolio. For being gold, CEL tokens have to be a minimum of 15% of the rest of your portfolio. Silver 10%, bronze 5%, so on and so forth. And if you are a platinum tier member, then you get some bonus rewards, which is what we're going to talk about. You also get some discounts on your loans, but we're not going to talk about that today, maybe in another video. Today, we're going to just talk about the bonus in terms of rewards and see if that affects the utility of the CEL tokens, right? Or the utility of CEL tokens in and of themselves, the primary utility as proclaimed by Celsius. So have a look at this. You would have $10,000 worth of CEL tokens and $40,000 worth of Bitcoin if you wanted to be platinum, so on and so forth. And you would have some of your portfolio converted to CEL tokens if you wanted to have that status, right? And the rest of it, of course, would be Bitcoin. So $10,000 worth of CEL tokens, $40,000 worth of Bitcoin. That's 25% of 40,000, and that's your platinum status, so on and so forth, right? If you have no status at all, you would have $50,000 worth of Bitcoin and no CEL tokens. And as your status increases, you would have a higher percentage of your portfolio in CEL tokens. And you would receive a certain bonus on your weekly rewards, because Celsius provides weekly rewards, and they have been providing and sending out weekly rewards for now at this point of time. For me, it's been over 18 months. Regularly, every Monday, like clockwork, I receive an email that rewards have been deposited into your wallet and they are now being compounded. So I like that email very much. And full disclosure, I'm a platinum user, and you're going to see why. As a platinum member, I get a 25% bonus on my Celsius wallet holdings, right? So if you have $50,000 worth of cryptocurrency, mostly Bitcoin and CEL token in your wallet, then what you're going to see is that the interest that you accrue on Bitcoin is highest when you hold the highest amount of Bitcoin, which is when you have no status at all or no CEL tokens at all. Now, here are some assumptions I'm making. I'm making an assumption that in order to own some Celsius token or some CEL token, you would have to sell off or trade in or swap some of your Bitcoin, right? So you're not going to put more money, more fiat into your cryptocurrency wallet. You're just going to swap a part of it. So let's say 20% of it into CEL tokens if you wanted to have the platinum status right here. Okay. So of course, the highest interest you receive, and right now the interest rates are as following. For the first 0.25 Bitcoin, you get 6.2%. And then for the rest, you get 3.05%. Okay. That's percentage for the rest, so not the entire thing. So let's say if you have $50,000 worth of Bitcoin in your wallet, let's say on the first 10,000, assuming the current value is $40,000, which it is roughly right now, on the first $10,000 you would receive 6.2%, and on the balance you would receive 3.05%, this is the annual interest. So you would receive $1,840 in interest in Bitcoin, of course, if you're earning in kind, which is what you can do if you have no status at all, which is what you would be likely to do if you have no status and you don't believe in the CEL token. So you would receive $1,840 in Bitcoin. Now, of course, this is assuming that the value of Bitcoin does not fluctuate, which is not going to happen, of course. Bitcoin is going to go up and it's going to go down. Just a few weeks ago, it was at or very close to all-time high of $70,000. Now it's down to $40,000. So you can see the variance there. But the point remains, if Bitcoin were $40,000, you would receive $1,840 in interest on your $50,000 Celsius wallet holdings, right? And of course, if you had bronze status, you would have traded $2,381 worth of Bitcoin and received $2,381 worth of CEL tokens. but you would receive a 5% bonus on top of your $1,767 in interest received, which is $88.37. And this number keeps going up. So the extra interest you receive on BTC, because you receive, remember, you receive a bonus on your rewards, right? So if you have the bronze status, you would receive a 5% bonus. If you have the silver status, you would receive a 10% bonus on your $1,701 received in Bitcoin interest. And then the same thing applies on the gold status, except you would receive 15% in extra interest, right? In extra rewards. And finally, if you had the platinum status, of course, you would receive less interest. So overall, since you only have $40,000 worth of Bitcoin now instead of $50,000 that you started out with, you traded $10,000 out of the $50,000 portfolio for CEL tokens. So you're receiving $1,535 in Bitcoin interest, and the extra interest received is $383. Okay? But that's not the only thing you receive, because remember, you're also going to receive interest on the CEL token itself. So now you hold $10,000. Let's say you hold $10,000 worth of CEL tokens. Well, you would receive $510 worth of interest on the CEL tokens that you own, right? So the extra interest on Bitcoin is $383.75. And on top of that, you're also receiving $510 in interest on CEL tokens, which is 5.1% on all the CEL tokens you hold. Okay? So based on this, and assuming the values don't fluctuate too much, we can see how much more money you're going to make compared to someone who does not hold any Bitcoin at all. So this is the baseline. This is the baseline for a user, which is an average user that holds $50,000 worth of cryptocurrency in their Celsius wallet, and they receive $1,840 in Bitcoin interest every year. And if you had the bronze status, if you had just traded $2,381, roughly $2,400 worth of Bitcoin for CEL tokens, you would receive an extra $137 in interest, which doesn't sound like a lot, right? That's throughout the year. So you're making whatever, only 40 cents, 30 cents every day extra. But we're going to take into account how much of that portfolio, or what's the valuation of your portfolio that changes as a result. We're getting to that. Of course, if you have the silver status, then you would receive an extra $263.32. If you had the gold status, roughly $380. And if you had the platinum status, you would receive an extra $600 a year. Which, you know, it's not life-changing or earth-shattering, but it's also nothing to sneeze at. I mean, nobody's giving out $600 for absolutely nothing at all, right? Of course, you do assume some risk, because there has been a situation over the last, let's say, 6 to 7 months, where CEL token has really underperformed compared to the market. But let's see if that's going to change. And you can tell me by the end of this video whether you think that'll change or not. I think it will. Anyway, so the extra return on investment on your entire portfolio, depending upon your status, so bronze being the lowest, varies from 0.274% to 1.178%, okay? That's the extra ROI you receive. And by the way, I just went ahead and made a calculation on the ROI you receive on the CEL tokens that you hold. So basically, this is the ratio of the extra money you make and the CEL tokens you have in the account, right? So you're making an extra $600, $588 on $10,000 worth of CEL tokens in your portfolio, which you would not have otherwise made. And that's basically varies from 5.7% to 5.8%. And these numbers are going to change as the value of your portfolio changes. We're going to look at that in a little, in a few minutes. So what does that mean for you? Okay, what does this extra $600 a year signify for you? How much is this worth? How do you place a monetary value on the extra rewards that you're receiving as a platinum or a gold or a silver or a bronze holder of CEL tokens? So when I think about real estate, I think about 4% or 25x, right? What that means is that every time I receive $1,000 from a piece of property, that's worth $25,000 to me. So if I'm receiving $1,000 a year, that's worth 25,000. If I'm receiving $10,000 a year, that's worth 250,000. And that's the 4% rule. And that's a rule of thumb that a lot of investment advisors talk about. They talk about if you want to retire, you want to have a 4% rule of thumb. You'll receive a 4% return on your entire portfolio if you have a well-diversified portfolio, etc., etc. So while I do not agree with that term, I do not agree with the kind of returns that they're talking about, let's assume a 4% return and 25x. But in the crypto world, of course, that's too little. So let's just do a 10% rate of return and 10x, right? So the extra $588.75 that you're making are worth a grand total of, let's see, at a valuation of 12x, they're worth a grand total of $7,000. And at 10x, if you wanted to do 10x, which is very, very, very low valuation, a very low valuation if you think about it, but they're still worth $5,888 or $3,799 or $2,633 or $1,372, depending upon the status that you have. So that's the extra value in terms of the portfolio that you have, based entirely upon the extra interest or the extra rewards that you receive simply by owning some CEL token, right? And if you compare that to the value of your overall portfolio, the value of your portfolio goes up by 12% if you're a platinum member. It goes up by 8% if you're a gold member. The value goes up by 5% if you're a silver member, and if you're a bronze member, the value of your portfolio goes up by 3%. Now, these are very conservative numbers. You can look at not a 10x. If you look at the traditional way of investing and you thought of 25x or 4%, then of course these numbers change drastically. So for me, 25 is a good number and 25x is a good number because 4% rule of thumb is very, very comfortable. If I want to retire, I want to have a 4% return on my entire portfolio. So an extra $588 is worth $14,719 to me. That's what 25x means. And that's an escalation of 29% in your Celsius wallet portfolio. So whatever you're holding in your Celsius wallet is worth 29% more. That's just one way of looking at things, right? The other thing that you're doing is you're taking some risk when you are saying, okay, instead of receiving interest in Bitcoin, I'm going to receive interest in CEL token. Because now you're holding a part of your portfolio in CEL token and you're also receiving interest in CEL token. So you are basically assuming that the CEL token will grow at least at the same pace at which Bitcoin has grown. So let's look at the historical 2 years. Now, you might say I'm cherry picking data, but that's only because there's no data beyond 2 years for CEL token. So CEL token hasn't been around for very long. 2 to 3 years is as long as we'll get, okay? Let's look at the entire thing. And back in, let's say 2019, 2018, right? So at the beginning, it was at 4 cents, 5 cents. The valuation was close to 4 to 5 cents, and now it's close to 100 times that much. And that's in less than 4 years. Bitcoin, on the other hand, of course, hasn't grown 100x in 4 years. 4 years ago, it was at close to $20,000. Or when it crashed, it went down to roughly $3,500, and then it went back up. So it has grown by 20x, depending upon when you bought it. So Bitcoin has grown very fast, but not quite as fast as the CEL token. And why is that happening? A lot of people like to say that CEL token cannot grow as fast as Bitcoin or Ethereum, and I beg to disagree. CEL token is a small company. It's owned by, or it represents the interests of a very small community, a community with just 500,000 verified users. It's in its infancy right now. Imagine what happens when they have 5 million users or 50 million users. That's not a huge company right now by any means. If you look at any startup right now, any meaningful startup, 50 million users, that's a very, that's really expected for a startup to even become large or a unicorn at this point of time. So Celsius is in its infancy right now, whereas Bitcoin is already a behemoth right now. Okay, Celsius can grow much faster than Bitcoin simply because it represents a very small community which has the potential to grow far more exponentially and with far greater intensity than Bitcoin or Ethereum have at this point of time. There may be some other projects, but I don't really know of any other projects that are growing as fast as Celsius is, especially if you look at the exchanges, right? The largest, the top 5 coins, I think BNB is in the top 5. So let's look at the top market. Yeah, so Bitcoin, Ethereum, Tether, and then the fourth one is BNB, which is the coin for Binance, which is largely an exchange. And I have reason to believe, and you should have reason to believe, that Celsius is going to become something that steals away a lot of the business that Binance and FTX have, simply because you can swap instantly with zero fees. Okay, I don't really already have this yet, but I should expect to have this swap ability to swap every day. From what I hear, up to $75,000 worth of cryptocurrency every single day with zero fee whatsoever. Okay, zero fee and zero downtime on how long I'm not earning my interest, weekly interest. So, yeah, I think that makes a point, and that makes a very valid point of how much this thing is worth to your entire portfolio. And that varies. By the way, you can download this Excel sheet if you want. I'll provide a link in the description of this video. And we can also look at what happens if you have a much smaller portfolio. So if you have, let's say, a much smaller portfolio, let's say $11,000 worth of cryptocurrency in your account, then, of course, the escalation is even larger. 43% if you are platinum, 27% if you're gold, 19% if you are silver, and 10% if you're bronze. This is assuming you can trust this 25x metric, but of course you can change it, right? So instead of 25x, you can say, oh, I only believe that the extra rewards I'm receiving are worth 10 times as much or 12 times as much, okay? So if it's 12 times as much, well, multiply that by 12, so yeah. And that's worth anywhere between 5% and 21%. So that's how you increase the value of your portfolio, and that's where the utility of the CEL token comes into picture. Now, this doesn't take into account how CEL token is ripe for a short squeeze or the equivalent of a short squeeze in the upcoming months or even years, simply because there's a finite number of CEL tokens. Some of them are locked up. A lot of them are being held by hodlers who do not like to sell their CEL tokens, or any cryptocurrency for that matter, yours truly included. And then a small number of them are always in play. But as the number of users increases, right now Celsius buys about 500,000 to 1 million CEL tokens every week for rewards. But what happens when they have 100 times as many users? Would they be able to buy 100 times as many CEL tokens just as easily, or would the price have to go up? That's something for you to chew on, right? So when they have, let's say 50 million users or 20 million users, and they need to buy a proportionally large number of CEL tokens every week. So basically, instead of 500,000 to 1 million, they would have to buy 20 million CEL token to 40 million CEL tokens a week. Would they be able to buy them at the same price or at a similar price, or would the price have to skyrocket? Or could we actually have a situation where the price skyrockets simply because there's not enough CEL token supply on the open markets, and there's just no way for the Celsius network to be able to buy all those CEL tokens that they're buying on a weekly basis for a sensible price? Personally, I'm going to continue to hold on to the CEL tokens that I have, and I'm going to continue to accumulate more CEL tokens, because I do believe that Celsius as a company is doing really well, and the utility is there. I mean, if you think an extra, okay, on a portfolio that's just $11,000, it's nothing. An extra $190, that's almost 2% of the portfolio. An extra 2%, that's like 20 times as much as your bank gives you. That's the extra rewards, not the total rewards. That's the extra rewards you will receive just by becoming platinum, just by holding a part of your portfolio in CEL tokens. Is not worth anything. That's not utility at all. Then I don't know what utility you are talking about. Okay, and that's true for large users as well. I mean, if you have $1 million in your wallet, okay, maybe the numbers are not as big, the escalation is not as huge, but you still have a 3 to 12% escalation of your portfolio just by owning some CEL token. Personally, I own a lot of CEL token. I mean, it's more than 25%, I can tell you that, of my portfolio. Okay, I'm a platinum user. I've always been a platinum user. I started my Celsius wallet with CEL token and then deposited other cryptocurrencies into it. But yeah, if you look at an extra $100,000 in valuation on a $1 million portfolio, that's nothing to sneeze at. Okay, that's an extra $10,000 a year, and that's really nothing to sneeze at, even if you're a millionaire. One last thing I want to talk about before we close this out. Why is the price of CEL token falling? Well, it's not really. I mean, it went up to $8. Now it's down to $2 or $3 or something like that. It's not that bad, is what I'm saying. Because this is still something in its infancy, and there's no reason why the number of users, verified users, cannot go from 500,000 to 5 million, and from 5 million to 50 million. And that would, of course, feed the flywheel. Celsius network would have to buy a larger number of CEL tokens on the open market every week. And as the number of user grows, the user base grows, the community grows, it's not going to be easy for them to be able to buy CEL tokens for everyone, especially since there's a very limited supply of CEL tokens. And now they've decided to burn some of the CEL tokens. I've heard people talking about how that burn has no effect whatsoever. However, these people are completely and clearly disregarding the power of compounding, because as the number of CEL tokens they buy every week on the open market grows, especially since the value is falling right now, right? So they have to buy more CEL tokens to pay out an equivalent amount of USD interest every Monday. They are also going to have to burn more CEL tokens, and that actually just reduces the liquidity or the availability of CEL tokens on the open market. So eventually they're going to come to a point where they're going to want to buy CEL tokens, but the price would naturally have to skyrocket in order for that to happen, because I'm not going to sell my CEL tokens until they are $200 a piece. So at $200 a piece, sure, there's going to be a lot of liquidity, but at $20, I'm not going to sell them. I'm still going to be buying at $20. And there are a lot of people like me, a lot of people within the top 500 that you can look at here. I know several people over there, top 500, who are still buying CEL tokens and receiving interest on CEL tokens on a weekly basis. So that's just that's a lot of CEL tokens being burned every week and reduced and taken out of circulation, sent to the Ethereum black hole. And that may not be the smartest thing that Celsius has done. Actually, I'm not much in favor of burning off CEL tokens every week, because that reduces the liquidity, and there's no reason to do that. The flywheel is working well. Some people are selling, of course. I mean, if you bought at 3 cents, would you want to sell at $5? Of course. I mean, you're a genius. You made whatever, 2,000% or 1,500% in 2 years. You're a genius now. Wouldn't you want to do that? Of course you would. Part of me wishes I had sold a quarter of my portfolio when it was at $7 or $8, but I'm not too worried, because you can never really time the market and can always go against you, right? The markets can always move against you. So you sell it at $8 and next thing you know, it's already at $20 and now you're regretting it. So I've got diamond grip. I am a long-term investor. When I went into this project, I knew that I liked the project. I understood the project. The risk I was taking was worth it. And I risked a small amount of my portfolio, a small percentage of my portfolio, and I bet it on CEL token, and I'm going to take it to its conclusion, which might take another 5 years or 10 years, but I don't care. I might still continue to hold a part of my portfolio even beyond $200 or $500 price point for the CEL token, simply because I'm receiving interest on a weekly basis, and I can just convert that interest into USDC if I want to take care of my expenses, in the real life, in the real world, not on a screen, right? So it continues to work well for me, and I hope it continues to work well for you as well. Of course, this is not financial advice. This is just what I think, where the utility comes from. And we have not even begun to talk about Celsius X or swaps and the limits, daily limits that are associated with being a platinum level user. So I believe, and don't quote me on this, please, but if you're a platinum level user, you can do $75,000 worth of swapping every day. Whereas if you have no level at all, it's only like $20,000 or $25,000 worth of swapping every day. And you might think, who's doing all that kind of volume? But let me assure you, there are people who are, and let's just leave it at that. People who are doing a lot more than that. So yeah, there That's swaps. Then there's the credit card. We don't know how CEL tokens are going to be tied into that. Then there is the matter of the accredited US investors who are now able to earn in CEL tokens. And eventually we might get to a point where CEL token is something that non-accredited US users can also earn in. So that would actually put more pressure on the flywheel, and they would have to buy a larger and larger amount of CEL tokens on the open market each week while the liquidity continues to go down, because they're burning 50 to 60,000, actually 60, 70,000 CEL tokens every week, I think. So when the amount of liquidity is going down that rapidly and the demand continues to escalate, well, you don't have to be an economist to tell where the price is going from there. So that's it from me. My name is Laksh Bell. I hope you enjoyed this video and you learned something out of it. If you have any questions, comments, please share them below. Let me know what you think, and I'll see you in the next one.